Welcome to the I'll Think About It podcast. Nothing is off limits in this space because we are interested and curious about everything. Join us for a thoughtful journey into the heart of the deep issues of our day with a few laughs along the way. Let's do this.
Well, we covered all the subjects when it comes to COVID. We went into vaccines, we went into relationships. We tried to focus on relationships, but as with anything having to do with COVID, we went down a lot of rabbit holes.
Mostly my fault.
Well, yeah, but as we wrap up at the end, and we decided that sometimes it's good to go down those rabbit holes.
Yeah, and I think as we all start looking at COVID in the rearview mirror, we're reflecting on some of the things that happened, and that's probably a healthy thing for us to be doing, because we certainly don't want to repeat some of what happened in the whole COVID thing. So this is a rip-roaring discussion.
It is, yeah. We get into it, and I think we come to the conclusion at the end that
Well, no, save the conclusion.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Just a teaser then, I guess, right?
That's right.
Enjoy.
So here it comes. Get ready. Okay, and today's topic is about COVID relationships. What about COVID relationships, Erin?
Well, we're going to talk about how relationships weathered, whether they did or not weather,
Okay.
the time of the pandemic. And
Oh, I see. So you mean like how friendships or relationships with friends and family were changed as a result of COVID,
Yes.
COVID restrictions, all that
Correct.
kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there,
Okay.
and we're going to get into that. And just that a lot of relationships did not come out the other side looking the same as when they started. But before we start today, let's just see how you're doing.
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Another happy day.
Another happy day.
Another happy
Okay.
day. Yeah. Nothing too new and exciting is going on. I'm looking forward to the holidays, having a little bit of time off, hopefully. And, yeah.
Yeah, in
What
your
about you?
job, sometimes you think you have time off and then you don't.
Well, to make matters worse, sometimes when everybody else has time off is when I have the opportunity to work because
True.
I can't do certain things. I'm in IT, and sometimes when you're making big changes, the actual ideal time to do that is when everybody else is
So
not
like the
working.
middle of the night
or in the middle of a vacation,
of a holiday weekend, or
that kind of thing.
when no one's going to complain about being
Right. Nobody
off.
hopefully is noticing whether or not their email is down for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Although surprisingly, some people do.
Yes. Yeah. I think that there are some people that are always on their email.
So how about you, Erin? Was there anything interesting that happened for you this week?
Well, we just saw Wakanda Forever.
I'm sorry, what?
Wakanda. It's a Marvel movie.
Is that the name of something?
Erin, you just don't even have you ever heard of?
No, I've never.
No.
heard of
Okay.
that.
Well,
I'm
am I
sorry.
not surprised? That's okay. So we just saw Wakanda. There was the first movie. It was Black Panther, and it's a Marvel movie based on.
Oh, it's a comic book.
Yes, a comic.
That's why I don't know anything.
Okay, but I mean, like it's a giant movie.
Yeah, well, okay.
Okay.
that means nothing to me.
Okay. So anyway, the Black Panther was out. It's very popular, but the sad story is that the actor died after the movie was released.
Oh, you mean the actual person?
The actual person.
Oh, wow.
And he's just, it's very, very sad. He suffered from cancer and
Oh my gosh. Was he old guy or young?
no, young, prime of his career.
Oh, that's crazy.
No, it's sad. And then he was suffering like privately.
So during filming and stuff?
I think that he was on various treatments during filming, but no one really knew. Like when he passed away, it was a surprise to a lot of people. But it was just very sad, and no one else was going to replace him as this character. And so then they needed to make they wanted to make another movie because it was such a giant movie. And so the whole idea was, how are they going to make this movie and still honor this actor who there's never going to be another Black Panther?
So they finished filming. He died before it was released?
No, it was released, and I think maybe he died a couple years later.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But they were going to make a number 2. It was always known.
But he was never able to probably do that.
No.
Yeah.
And so how was the storyline going to play out? And I thought they did a good job. There's some parts of the movie that are sort of heavy-handed. They like to really throw around the word, calling people colonizers and stuff like that. And so it's a
colonizer. I mean, what does this take place in 1780 or something?
No, but it's modern day.
Well, what's a modern day colonizer? I don't understand.
The modern day colonizer, they say that we have gone in and colonized various nations. The West is considered to be colonizers. And so...
Well, yeah, like hundreds of years ago.
Yes. And so part of the Wakanda script is to be a little heavy-handed with that. And so there are some parts that I'm like, and I got out of the movie saying that was a great movie. I think they handled his...
This is a perfect example. If you're going to indoctrinate young people on how to use pejoratives against people who have no responsibility in something that happened in the past, this is the perfect way of doing that.
I would say... This is true.
Yeah, I could never have gotten past that the first time.
Oh, I don't think you could. Yeah, so maybe it's good that you'd never heard of it.
That's probably really good. That makes me sad because I'm sure it's a perfectly fine, entertaining film. But why do you have to shove down that kind of ridiculous indoctrination down the viewer's throat? That's just reprehensible to me.
It didn't need to be in there. It doesn't further the story at all. It doesn't do actually anything to the storyline. It's not necessary to have.
No, it's not. To
use that type of language.
It's offensive.
Yes,
is what it is.
And so, and it doesn't. It's not part of the story. Mm-hmm. It's like you just are using language just to cause offense.
It's interesting in an era where everybody is so worried about offending other people. There are certain things that people don't mind at all being offensive about. Right. It's very, it's very, what's the word? They're very choosy about what to get upset about that's offensive. But I think that's offensive on its face. I mean, that's ridiculous.
In just movies in general that I have a hard time looking past when I can see that they're specifically using language or scenes that don't further the storyline at all, but that are just serve a purpose that's political or just to make a point.
Right.
And like I said, when it's not part of the story, it's like when there's sex in a movie and you're like, that did nothing.
Right. It didn't
to further the story or bad language or
piques people's interest though. Right?
I guess so, but it doesn't make the story move forward. Right. It doesn't. If you took it out, your story would not change.
Would be perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you can take something out and it hasn't changed, it doesn't change the story, then it's not useful.
Right.
To be in there.
Yeah, because you could use that time for improving the story in some other way.
Or just shortening the movie.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Right.
But as far as how they handled the character of Black Panther and how they honored, him and him passing away, I thought they did a really good job, and it's very sad.
Those stories are always very sad.
It's very, very sad, and
people die young.
He died young at the peak of his career, and he was just from everyone that said they knew him, said he was just a really good person, just a nice, good guy.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem like something you hear often.
No,
in Hollywood these days. So, okay, well, I guess there's no time like the present to get into the topic. Then,
yeah, let's talk about relationships.
This was your idea for a topic, obviously, and this clearly is something that you had thought about, or maybe something had happened to cause you to think about it. I'm wondering, is there a particular incident or whatever that?
No particular incident. It was just a gradual awakening to things changing in front of me during the pandemic. A sudden realization that people that I thought that I knew, and I'm not talking about my quote unquote inner circle. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about people that were sort of friends, but maybe a little bit on the periphery, but you sort of going along, you're doing things that are sort of the same as them. Maybe they're homeschooling, maybe they're going to the same church. And so you kind of think because you do certain things that you're going to be aligned in other areas.
Right.
And then a major shock happens and you're like, wow, I can see this person is just on the other end of the spectrum.
So do you have an example of one of these kind of things?
Well, let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
So March 19th, 2020, Newsom issues shutdown orders.
That's the governor of California.
Governor of California, yes. And then the beaches close. Takeout becomes a thing.
That's right. Everybody does.
Yeah, everyone's doing takeout.
Is that around the same time that the the lone guy in the middle of the ocean on a paddleboard gets arrested by I don't know who is that, like.
I think it was I think it was a lifeguard. Maybe this probably has to be fact checked, but I have a memory of it being the lifeguards that went after him. But I can't imagine that they would have not done that under duress.
This is. I mean,
ridiculous.
This is how crazy COVID got people, right?
Yeah,
you have a guy in the middle of the ocean by himself, and they send out a boat, whoever it was, some government of some kind, goes out. They arrest him or whatever you want to say.
They arrested him.
They pull him out of the ocean. I mean, because he is not in his house.
Well, he was not in his house. He was actually, okay. It was that he was on the beach and the beach was closed.
But he's not on the beach. He's
in the ocean. Well, what's even dumber is he's alone. Right, and then you actually introduce people.
Oh God!
So by going after him, then you create
now you're actually creating an interaction.
Yeah,
right.
So stupid.
That would never have probably otherwise happened, because otherwise he would have done his thing. He would have went back by himself to his car by himself and went home or whatever by himself.
But maybe he would have inspired other rebels to go out and paddleboard.
Okay, again, if they're all out there by themselves, I mean, my God, people, if 6 feet was supposedly enough indoors to prevent us from spreading it. I mean, do you think, I don't know, 30, 40, 300 feet or more in the ocean would be enough? Listen, one day we're going to look back on this era and we're going to just be like astonished at some of the insanity.
I'm astonished now.
I know.
I'm astonished now, but it's even, the astonishment is going to grow, I think, over time.
Probably will grow.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I
didn't. No, that's
it was just the image. I remember the photo of the guy literally by himself in the middle. I mean, I say the middle of the ocean. He's hundreds of yards offshore.
I mean, he was outside of the surf line.
Yeah, he's way outside the surf line.
Okay, and I think he was like in LA County Beach, and those are that surf line is those waves
not populated anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So sorry to derail.
No, it's okay. So takeout becomes a thing, and it's about this point when the content of my texts start to change. I'm starting to sense panic.
You mean what people are sending you?
Yeah, in like my texts, my conversations with various people. And
I'm assuming this is usually other girlfriends or whatever?
Other girlfriends, yeah.
Right.
And I'm starting to see some language that will eventually become popular, like stay home, and then that becomes an internet or an Instagram sticker.
Well, I'm not familiar with this. What is this?
So on Instagram, they had this little...
And just for the record, so everybody knows, I'm not on Instagram or social media.
Yes, Erin is not on social media.
So this may be really obvious to some of you, but I'm hopefully there's other people like me who do need to know what you're talking about there. So when you're in and you post something in your stories, okay, so you can post still photos in your feed, or you can post quick stories that are like 24 hours. Okay.
And you can choose from stickers to put on there. And so a popular sticker was like stay home. And
that was a way of like, I don't know, preaching to people.
You virtue signal to people. Okay. You preach to people. You're telling them to stay home with your stay home.
Meanwhile, they're sending a photo of how they're having fun outside.
I actually don't even remember the content of the pictures were. No, it's maybe stuff of them inside. And then they're like, they've got the stay home sticker.
Okay.
So to like reconvince everyone to stay home. It's not just the sticker, but it's...
And I know I won't derail you too much, but it is interesting, like the virtue signaling, it was so powerful. I mean, this is just a minor example.
Well,
I'm sure you probably have 100 of these examples. And that reinforces the panic almost, right?
Yeah, it's circular. You're like, I'm afraid, then other people are afraid, but you start to sense the relationships around you. You don't really know who is on what team.
Or what I don't like to use that phrase, but whose approach is so different from yours that there's a problem with compatibility.
Okay.
Right.
Problem with compatibility. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because if you are of the mindset that this is extremely dangerous, and somebody could die with minor contact, then you're going to proceed with one course of action. And the other extreme would be that you think there's zero danger at all. And those two obviously
are very,
they can't mix at all.
Yeah. So wait, one day you're hanging out with someone,
mm-hmm.
and then the next day that person thinks that literally even, you being next to them, they're going to die right away.
Right.
And so they're really, really worried about that. And I never got to that point.
You mean of the fear?
Of the fear.
Okay.
I was doing a lot of searching.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing searching.
Were you searching on the Google?
Yes. But I will say in early 2020, before the Rona became
the Rona. That's right. There were all these little
the Rona.
There were all these
Remember?
little phrases.
Yeah.
The
So,
vid.
The vid. Yeah. Before it became political, though, the search results were not manipulated.
Right. It was a little more.
It was still freewheeling out there. And so you could actually search on stuff and stuff would come up because they had not attached political content to it early.
And therefore any type of censoring of the results.
Yeah. And so they didn't, it was just like the most current stuff would pop up. And, but it's during this time I mentioned to one friend that, so Newsom shuts stuff down and some friends and I decided we're going to go on a drive. We're going to go 4-wheel driving. So we thought, okay, we can go on a drive. We're like going to be out
in the desert.
In the desert. Yeah. Away from everyone. But I mentioned to one friend who wasn't going on this that we were going to do this drive. And I could sense she responded back and I can't remember her exact words, but I was like something like, well, we are not allowed to be going out. The governor has shut down trails. We are not allowed to go out. I would not be doing that. And you could it was like this finger wagging. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's okay for us to go on it. We're like not going to be near anyone. Right at that moment, though, I could feel a tearing in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And it's sad.
Did that end up being a kind of a permanent thing?
I haven't really talked to that person
ever since.
Yeah. Very minimal communication. Because the texts that started out like that first week or whatever, like, oh, we're in this together. Then eventually just were like,
meaning we're in this, the COVID fight together.
Which it was like the first 5 days, right? And then eventually it just become this gradual awareness of like someone being completely in the opposite end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And it was sad. But then you see society around you, like, should you do takeout? Should you not do takeout? And then our city started falling apart because the beaches were closed, but then people were still going down to the beach. I don't even know if you remember this, but they had a whole the bioluminescence was out in the ocean.
Yeah, that's for people who don't know, there's certain, I don't know if they're plankton or there's some kind of plant like, or I don't know, small little animal thing, whatever. They kind of glow in the dark. They look like they look like that greenish color of the glow sticks, and the ocean can get kind of full of them. Like there's a bloom or something.
It was blue, and
it's really
stunning.
Cool. It's really neat looking.
It was beautiful. It was really, really strong in San Clemente, and right in the middle of the shutdown, there were people filling the beaches to look at all of this bioluminescence. At the very same time, there were people that were saying, don't leave the house.
Right.
And it was, it was very hard to navigate where people stood.
It seems like there were, I guess you could, I bet somebody's written a paper on this. There's probably different ways to categorize the people, right? There's the people who believed everything the government or the authorities or whatever said to a T, and maybe even more so. And so they were full on panic mode, but also just in extreme compliant mode. And then you would have the other end of the spectrum where, the government tells me to do this, I'm just not going to do it. And then you have those in between, those people who kind of just don't care and like, oh, well, we're just having some time off from work, but I'm going to go do whatever I would normally do. And between those categories, the ones that were in the maximum fear mode were going to be the ones to create or initiate or react in such a highly negative and destructive way. Even if they ended up, which I think it's fair to say now, they weren't really right in that panic mode to warrant damaging relationships because of non-compliance. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly how I would sum it up. I think that, at the time, based on what we knew, it was incorrect. And then as time has gone by,
it's even more and more obvious.
It's even more and more obvious. So, my natural reaction to people telling me what to do is to recoil. Like I don't I have a natural like fight or flight when I'm told to do something. It's what we've talked about in the past. When everybody's saying to do it,
you're like, well, why?
Well, why? Really?
Yeah. Well, it goes in line with what I said last week, where when everybody agrees on something, you get a little bit suspicious sometimes.
Well, yeah, especially since there was data available because this was the time before they were censoring.
Clearly, everything. I mean, I don't know how many times a scientist, epidemiologist, or something would be written that would say, quarantine is only ever for the sick. We have never in history quarantined the healthy in a health crisis. That's literally never happened.
Yeah.
And yet all of a sudden it became the only means by which we were going to supposedly get through this.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have to really wonder, okay, well, why was that? Why does this make sense? Why is quarantining the healthy make sense? But nobody, I mean, you could ask that question, but you certainly weren't going to get any answers from anybody.
Well, certainly not as time went on.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, maybe, I don't even.
Well, I remember scientists and whatever talking about how quarantining the healthy goes against everything we understand. I mean, epidemiology, I mean, the people who have studied their life's work is controlling disease and outbreaks. We're saying this was an insane policy. But then all of a sudden, I don't know why or how, all of a sudden they stopped talking.
Well, they were saying you're quarantining healthy people because everybody was a vector. That was the basis of it, though. Like they looked at everyone as a potential vector. They were looking at them saying, "You're carrying the virus and you just don't know it."
Yeah, but
I'm saying, not saying that was right, but right. That was what that was just, the reason at the time.
That's just laughable. The whole reason why a quarantine of the sick can work at all is because it's only the sick. Everything else in society continues to function. If you quarantine the healthy, by definition, you shut down everything.
Which is what we did.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's not even possible because, as we know, every guy who did the delivery of food, how many people, if it was possible to get COVID with such casual, interaction, how many of the Uber Eats guys spread the COVID? Was it any of them at all? But if it was that easy to spread, well, that's all it took. You needed nothing. If it was that bad,
then quarantining wasn't even going to help because
there's no way
you couldn't shut down to that level.
You can't shut down to that level.
Yeah.
You had to go to the grocery store. You had to get in your, you had to go to the doctor's office. I mean,
well, a lot of people didn't, and heart disease went up, cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, right, of course.
So, because doctor's office shut down.
But my point is that we ever thought that quarantining the entire, look what's happening in China just even recently. They're trying to shut down all of Shanghai, and you've got people screaming outside their high-rise apartment buildings, starving because they can't get any food. It just makes no sense. And I guess I didn't really have any particular problems with relationships in this regard, but it could be because I'm already kind of I'm an insular person to begin with.
But what did you do? You said on your block, you guys did some block parties, and everyone
You actually bring up a good point. So we're on a very social street. Love our little street, our little neighborhood here. And we used to have this habit on, especially in the warmer months, where we would go and we would just kind of hang out in the street in front of some of our houses on the yards and stuff, and maybe have a couple beers or whatever. And that was the way we would end on a Friday after work. And, after this happened, I remember one of the first times we didn't stop it. And maybe we did for like a week, but then people, they literally drew chalk lines around the front of their houses where nobody could cross these lines. So we would at least be able to talk, but there would be and then other people had like the German police had those little, those long poles, and nobody could come closer than the length of these poles.
But did you look at the people that were drawing the chalk lines or the people that were carrying the poles and say,
Well, I personally thought it was insane, yes.
No, but doesn't that at that very moment you realize how different you are from someone else, whereas that wouldn't have been obvious prior to this situation?
I suppose, but I didn't.
It's an awareness.
It is an awareness. And maybe because these are not people that I just know on social media, online, and I don't interact with them.
Friends.
They're actually people I socialize with in person. You know, it didn't seem, I mean, I thought it was ridiculous, this kind of stuff, but it wasn't going to, it didn't fundamentally change the relationship. Now, maybe from my perspective, maybe from their perspective, because I was kind of, I was semi-vocal that I thought it was a little bit on the ridiculous side. And maybe that offended them and changed their opinion of me, although I couldn't really tell. I do know that one of the families, their daughter was a nurse. And they were by far the ones most paranoid because their daughter had told them how everybody was dying. And of course, you know, I'm thinking to myself, well, she's looking at the most sick. Like if you work as a nurse in a hospital, all you're going to see are the dying people.
Well, it's not a representative sample.
It's not at all. And it doesn't actually represent the true danger. And she wasn't really thinking about the people who are actually dying. You know, what's that actual demographic? We now know is almost exclusively old people or people with extremely compromised
diabetes, overweight.
Yeah. I mean, the government themselves said an average of 2.6 comorbidities was what it took on average in order for it to reach lethality. Well, yeah, that's already a person who is unhealthy, right? Or over the age of, I don't know what it was, 70, something like that. People that you're already concerned with. So anyway, from that standpoint, my relationships, we just socialized a little bit less, but we still kind of interacted on a certain level, just less frequently. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, well, no, you know what? There probably were people that thought I was a little crazy. That's probably true.
You think people might have seen you because like Erin's a little casual about that chalk line.
Well, yeah, or that he's not listening to what they're telling us. Mm-hmm. He doesn't believe what they're saying.
But if they know you, they would know that would just be par for the course, right?
Right. These would be people that are a little bit more on the casual acquaintance side.
Yeah.
The others would know. But
no one who knows you would be surprised by that.
Would be surprised.
Right?
Well, yeah.
No, and I say that kindly, like you're always someone who's pushing the envelope and like.
Well, there's that, but also in cases like this, I'm very, very data oriented.
Yes.
Right? So I'm one of those weirdos who was actually reading some of these studies and stuff that they were publishing, and just none of this was making any sense. Their approach wasn't making any sense. It made no sense historically. The way they said it was being transmitted didn't make any sense. The cures, the so-called ways of preventing it from spreading were not making, nothing was making any sense. And to me, if you're actually looking at the data that we did have, and in the beginning, as you remember, we had access to a fair amount of data.
There was even the Chinese actually put out a spreadsheet.
Right.
They put out a spreadsheet like in February or like late February of all the people, like of who was dying. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was from the Chinese. And
of course it's from the,
whatever. We have to take that slightly with a filter. However, I mean, they had ages of the people who were dying. They had, what they actually died of, suspected at the time. And, you could see there were like barely any children on there.
So the thing for me was, I'm telling people, I'm like, well, I'm actually kind of looking at this data. Nobody else was doing that. All they're doing is listening to the government or the spokespeople for COVID management. And they never investigate past that. And to me, that was so weird. I'm like, we're shutting down everything and we're doing it purely based on just what these people are saying. And nobody wants to actually, like, you need to kind of provide evidence to me if you're going to go to the extremes that they went with. You should be compelled as the government to convince me that what you're doing is the right path. That should be a responsibility that you have, not that you just sit on high and make declarations and say things like all medical professionals agree, because they didn't all agree. They still don't agree. They never agreed. But they got up there and said that, and people believed it. And then I don't know if you saw this, and we're kind of gone on a tangent a little bit.
No, that's fine. That's what we're doing.
But the FDA was just in court saying they never told people not to take ivermectin.
What?
They actually testified in court to this.
Oh my gosh.
And as anybody who remembers, they did PSA announcements that were things that were like, come on, people, you're not a horse.
Oh yeah, the horse pill thing.
Yeah. That was coming from FDA, CDC, whatever, these government entities. And now they're in court claiming that they never said that. And why are they saying that now? Because now there's evidence that shows that it actually was effective. And so they're petrified of being held responsible for the fact that people died probably because, and I don't know how many, but probably some people died because they were telling people not to use it.
Well, people could make a determination or should be able to make a determination.
Their doctor. I mean, think of how crazy this was, right? In America, we've always given doctors extreme latitude on how to treat patients, what drugs to administer, all this kind of stuff. The government has a very hands-off approach historically in the United States for that. And understanding that medicine is not a perfect science, that there is some experimentation. Every case or every patient's situation is a case-by-case basis. So we don't want to have very strict guidelines on how treatments go. Yes, there are protocols, and all that means is that there's some evidence through different doctors via papers or in practice that have shown that they get good results from certain things. But the whole point is that our ability for doctors to experiment is what allows us to find these protocols, right? If you just immediately say on high, this is the way we're going to approach it, and there can be no deviation from that, then you will never discover alternative successful or more successful treatments. And that's exactly what we did from the get-go. We said, oh, you cannot, thou shalt not prescribe ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. Now, you can speculate as to why that happened, but the point is it did happen. And now we know that those things actually had efficacy.
Well, in California that our governor just signed a bill saying, he was speaking specifically for COVID misinformation, that if you're a doctor and you provide misinformation, and they're categorizing misinformation as anything that's against the state of California.
You mean what the state health department or whatever says?
Yes, what the state health department says.
They're going to take your license, right?
They will take your license.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how dramatic a shift that is. You got freedom of speech. There's all kinds of arguments there. But in medicine itself, this shift is unbelievably dramatic because you are basically taking away the doctor's ability to use their judgment, their experience, even their ideas on how they might be able to treat a patient who is in distress. Yeah.
And if you're a good doctor, I'm not saying you're someone who's sort of flagrant with your patient's lives.
Oh, yeah, of course not.
If you're a good doctor, you want your patient to do well.
Yeah.
So you were willing to try treatments.
Absolutely.
That you're not going to be taking such a risk.
And by the way, something like this is why this is so maddening. Ivermectin, okay? We have a very good idea of the safety profile of that drug, which also, by the way, costs next to nothing to manufacture.
Well, because it's like off book. It's no longer.
There's no patent on it anymore. So it's extremely cheap to produce, extremely cheap to buy. And yet the FDA and various health agencies were telling us how dangerous this drug was. It's the exact opposite of what anybody who looked into this knew to be true. And to be fair, I guess the listener should know I did spend some time I went to pharmacy school and all this. So, I have some knowledge of pharmacology and what to look for and that kind of thing. I don't profess to be an expert, don't get me wrong, but it's not like I'm not starting from zero here.
Yeah.
And yet they're telling us something exact opposite of what we know to be true. There is an agenda. I don't know what it is. I can't pretend to know what the agenda is, but there had to be a reason why they were doing that. Because it certainly wasn't based in science. Because if you're going to get up there and say ivermectin isn't safe, you're just straight up lying.
Yeah, but do you think that they were saying that? Basically they were trying to surround the information to be as basic as they wanted it to be to get it out to the masses. This is the only way. This is the only thing I could see.
What they should have done was said, listen, don't just go, if they were really concerned, and this is valid, you say, don't go buy ivermectin and give it to yourself. Get a doctor to prescribe it for you.
Yeah.
That's all they needed to do. Because it's the doctors that have always been the gatekeeper to proper medicine. They're the ones that take a Hippocratic oath, not the HMO, not the FDA. Government agencies are not in charge of your health care. Okay. It is your doctor or your doctors, whatever. Okay. With your consent, by the way, right? That is how we have always done it. And
informed consent,
by
the way, which,
well, that's
another subject with the vaccines and everything. Right. So
anyway, so to kind of come back to the topic here in relationships, undoubtedly, as I would discuss this kind of thing in this fashion, there were people who thought I was just some crazy conspiracy guy. Mm-hmm. Okay. I have no doubt that's the case because they just want a simple answer and the government is giving them the answer. And if the government is saying that ivermectin is horse paste and will kill you if your doctor gives it to you.
Well, like Joe Rogan, I think, didn't he try to sue CNN, Sanjay Gupta, or there was something?
Sanjay Gupta went on his show. I remember that. And yeah, he kind of, I don't remember the details, but, Rogan kind of called him out on it.
Yeah, like you said I took horse paste. Yeah. I didn't. My doctor prescribed it.
Yeah, and I think didn't he like pull up the pill bottle or whatever, the prescription, right? And again, that just goes to show you how insane the world has gotten when somebody like Joe Rogan, who's, I think it's fair to say, is not an academic kind of guy, okay, is thinking how this is stupid. How this Sanjay Gupta, he's probably got 4 degrees and he's up there lying.
I have a hard time with the word lying because I don't like to ascribe lying to people. But you have people like Fauci said in the very beginning, don't wear masks, they don't work. And then he came back and said, oh, well, that was for the greater good. I wanted people to not be overbuying masks.
Noble lie.
The noble lie. Right. And so if someone's saying, oh, it's horse paste, are they committing the noble lie?
So here's the deal. Our whole system, okay, is predicated on the Constitution and our legal system, right? Are you allowed to lie under oath because it's a noble lie?
No.
Never, right?
Nope, never.
If you are a government official and you are talking about something that is fundamentally, supposedly, about life and death, do you get to tell a noble lie?
I think you never get to tell a noble lie.
It is a lie that has massive ramifications. So in order to justify something that it has such massive ramifications, we have to give it a superlative, a positive superlative. Thus, noble.
Noble.
Right?
So yes, for the greater good.
If they could have, they'd call it the heroic lie. Okay? I have no doubt.
Yeah. We were heroes. We lied. We manipulated just to get you to do the thing and stay home and be safe.
Aren't we so amazing because we had the courage to lie to America for your own good?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if they actually believe that, but that has to be the logic by which they argue their point.
It's the greater good fallacy.
Yeah. So the whole thing is really crazy, and I do think that a lot of them lied. Because look, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree. And it was, all you had to do was spend a little bit of time looking into this stuff. Like a normal educated person can read a lot of this medical information and these papers and these things are coming out. You don't have to be, well, okay, this goes in line with that whole notion that only the experts know.
Yes.
We must trust the experts. All the rest of us are so ignorant that we cannot make our own choices. I don't know where that came from and when that started, but it is absolute BS. Okay. All the expert is somebody with a degree who has demonstrated some ability to know about whatever that topic is or that specialty. Okay. Somebody can not have the degree and actually know more than that guy. It's not hard to do, most of it just involves a lot of reading.
Yes.
Okay. So this notion that we are all incapable of making any decisions and have to defer to the expert class is extremely dangerous, because the expert class is, by definition, an extreme minority who then suddenly gets to make decisions that we can't even argue with.
No
because
questioning.
We are not experts.
Yeah.
And of course,
well, I mean, you're expert on you're expert on what you see in front of you, right? You're an expert on what's happening in your daily life.
Are you?
Well, yes.
Well, the reason I say that because,
but the expert on high doesn't think that's the case.
Yes, but I was going to bring up the whole thing with when one of the congressmen asked, I don't know who it was, some government official or some nominee, and said, "Can men get pregnant?"
Oh, geez.
Right.
I'm not a biologist.
This right. And that's my point. That was her response. Her response was essentially, "I'm not an expert. Only an expert can answer that question." Now, I submit to the listener that if you are going along with that logic and that line of thinking, you have abdicated all rights to anything that happens in your life.
Yeah, you can't actually comment on anything.
That is such a fundamental, obvious thing of life. All right? No, men cannot get pregnant. Okay, they can't. Could I surgically implant a uterus and then surgically implant a kid or an embryo or whatever, and somehow through the genius of science, yes, I could do that. But did he actually get pregnant, people?
No.
Come on. Let's stop pretending. We have to stop this insanity.
But it's saying the thing that's obvious right in front of people, and they're like, no, that's not the case. And
you mean like the bigger the lie, the easier it is to
or no, I'm just saying, like, with a straight face, they can say that something is A and it's actually B. And you're like, well, no, that's not the case.
Yeah. I mean, if you always say you're going to defer to some expert or experts, then yeah, you can manufacture your own reality and your own truth. And that is in fact what they did. And they did it in our face in the most egregious way imaginable. And back to the topic here, look how that affected so many people's lives and their relationship. I mean,
well, yes, we go full circle. And so we have all of that has gone on. And then we have certain people that are like, wait, there's something hazy. This is not true. I only believe half of this.
Minimally, it's questionable.
Yeah. Let's talk about this.
Right.
And then we have people on the other side that were like all in.
Yeah. And those are the people that prevented their dying, ailing grandparents from being able to, talk to any of their relatives.
Well, the tragedy in our family is that my mother-in-law passed away in June, not from COVID. And we were staying away from her because we knew she was frail, but we didn't think she was not on death's door.
Right.
And the kids saw her on Mother's Day in May, and we did not see her again. And then she passed away, and we were staying away because rightfully so. We're like, we don't even want her getting a cold from us because she was just frail. But her death was shocking. And the fact that she did not pass away from COVID, that was not. So the thing that we were worried about wasn't even
not the thing to worry about.
Not the thing to worry about.
Right.
And it's time we'll never get back. And it's terrible.
I don't know. Obviously, there are going to be certain relationships in people's lives that are perhaps permanently altered as a result of the fracturing of society that COVID and really not even COVID, but the government in its response to COVID caused that we may never recover from. That's the sad reality. I would like to think that a lot of people have learned from this experience that it wouldn't happen again like this. That the next time the government declares that, there's an emergency, that they force the government to justify their case. But I'm not confident.
I am not hopeful for that at all. I think there are people in our society that are naturally reactive in that way, that are going to just instantly gravitate towards being worried in the way the government wants them to be worried. If the government says you need to feel this way, they're going to feel that way. They're going to feel it, and they're going to feel it quickly, and they're going to feel it intensely.
I mean, and I'm just going to throw this out, and it's
Sure.
not really a discussion thing, but it is fascinating when you look at the founding of our country, which kind of revolved, amongst other things, but around the extreme distrust of government compared to today, where there seems to be an unbelievable extreme amount of trust in the government.
Well, if you look at the studies, there's been polls on, is our democracy dying, or do we have trust in the government, where people will say that they don't trust the government,
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Yeah. COVID shows the reality.
The actual reality is different, because you can see how people will answer one way on a poll, and it's not the same as their actual actions in real life.
Right.
I mean, you had people saying they weren't going to have family members over because they were not vaccinated.
Right.
No one that was not an issue in my family.
Yeah.
And I remember, and there were people I didn't know very well. I'm in some like school groups, and they're mostly non-political groups, but every once in a while a thread would come up, and it would be like, oh, well, no one is coming over to my house who's unvaccinated. I've already told the family members. And I thought, and we're coming up on a holiday season. So it was sort of around the same time. I think it was the end of, the vaccine would have been available. So it would have been a year ago, because it was the holiday season of 2021. And I remember thinking at the time, going, wow, you're really ready to throw relationships with your family out the window because they're not vaccinated? You're willing to go that far?
And by the way, I think even then it was becoming painfully obvious that the vaccine didn't even prevent transmission.
Exactly. I mean, so I was at my son was sick in sort of midsummer 2021, not COVID. He had already had COVID. And we went into the doctor, or the urgent care, the local urgent care. And the lady said, do you want to get tested for COVID? I said, no. He literally just got over COVID like 8 weeks ago. He doesn't have COVID. I'm not sticking a thing up his nose again. It's like terrible. Because at that time they were doing the deep probing. Just like you're scraping your brain. It's terrible. In which, I mean, talk about too much information. There were people out there that actually had punctured.
Oh my God.
And they were leaking fluid.
A brain fluid?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
No, I read of a couple cases. I think they already had problems, so they were susceptible in a certain way. But it was like, I couldn't get that out of my mind. It was terrible. Long story short, I'm like, no, you're not probing him again. And she said, well, it's interesting. I'm just asking you because we've got all these people that are coming in that are vaccinated, and they think they've just got allergies. And the first thing they say is, I'm not testing for COVID. I just have allergies. I'm vaccinated. And they're testing them, and they're coming up positive. Right. So this was in July. This was before it was even out. I mean, this is still Biden. I think even after me going in, I think that's when Biden said this is the pandemic of the unvaccinated. Oh, right. And I had already been to the urgent care.
Cute little sound bite.
Exactly. And I had already been to the urgent care, and I'm like actually having this lady, this PA say, I've got all these vaccinated people coming in. Like, this is information on the ground.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so then to hear him say that, it's like, you're saying that. Like, you just said that. And now people are saying they're not going to have family members over for the holidays, when we also know that it's not protecting from spread.
Right.
Reducing symptoms for some people, seniors, people who have, conditions.
I'll be honest. I'm suspicious of all of the vaccine data at this point, because, unfortunately, Pfizer and these companies have been shown to minimally been disingenuous on the data they have revealed in their trials and stuff. So I at this point am not convinced that it even lessened symptoms.
Well, there's more to come on. I mean,
we'll see.
Time
more,
will
yeah,
go.
right.
Time is just.
Of course, then
history is
the
being
real
written.
question is, even if it did, and even if it gave, I don't know, 6 weeks of so-called immunity or improved immunity, the long-term effects and the risks of it. Well, actually, didn't I just see that Taiwan has announced now they've had more vaccine deaths than they had COVID deaths?
Oh gosh, no, I didn't know
I think
that.
I just recently saw that.
Okay.
Now, don't quote me on that, people, but I think I saw something akin to that. But in any case, we do know that vaccine-related deaths are continuing to go up, but not really the COVID deaths. So at some point, if you keep forcing vaccines, you're actually going to kill more people with a vaccine. A vaccine, by the way, again, which does not prevent transmission.
It's not a vaccine.
Well, certainly not in the sense that you and I always knew it.
No, they changed.
My understanding is they've changed the definition now, but yeah, a vaccine before was something. Then when you took it, it prevented you from essentially getting the disease. That actually prevented transmission and prevented the spread if you had a large portion of the population have the vaccine. Things like smallpox and stuff. But this apparently never really prevented transmission. Even, I mean, they say in the short term it had some effect, but I'm suspicious about that. I'm not saying that may be the case, but I'm not personally convinced of it based on what I've seen thus far.
Well, at the end of the day, it comes back to the informed consent. And
correct.
If someone has fully informed consent and that's what they want to do, then and they're adults.
Although one of the other things that's happened here is that because they only have ever really, in the United States, ever administered the emergency use authorization versions of the vaccines, they have blanket immunity. Now, there's already broad immunity for vaccine manufacturers. They have special rights as compared to the average drug, right? So if you get sick from a vaccine, the liability for the manufacturer is not the same as if you get sick from taking heart medication, for instance. Okay. But in the case of the COVID emergency use, they have essentially blanket 100% immunity, which is why even though the approved version is supposedly manufactured, it's still not administered in the United States, to my knowledge, to this day, because that opens the door for more liability for Pfizer, Merck, or whoever. So they just keep giving the emergency use authorization.
Well, did they maybe? I mean, we should fact check that. I don't.
Which aspect?
If what they're administering today.
Well, I know that's accurate as of a few months ago. Okay. I don't know if that's changed, but I mean, look at it. When did this start? And when was it the version, the Comirnaty is the brand name of the Pfizer one that was approved, the BioNTech Comirnaty? That I think was at least a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
If not more, right?
I think it's more.
And it was never admitted into the market. It's just, anyway, the whole COVID thing is such a rabbit hole because there's so many things that are wrong with it.
There's so many, yes.
And there's so many aspects about our culture and people's ability or willingness to destroy their livelihood, to allow the culture to be destroyed, to allow their freedoms to be taken, to allow their relationships to be damaged or destroyed. And for something that was comparatively not particularly lethal to begin with. You're talking about a very select age group, very select demographic. And even in those demographics, the death rate, if you did get it, was nothing like smallpox, for God's sake, or the plague or any of the traditional diseases that would cause people to freak out about.
Well, we have risk in our life every day.
Yeah, right.
And so you have
common discussion for us, isn't it?
Well, yeah. You basically, from the moment you put your foot on the floor when you get out of bed, you are encountering risk.
Yeah. Risk is everywhere.
It's
inherent in life.
Yeah, and so we can't shut down.
You can never eliminate risk.
You can never eliminate risk. I mean, insurance companies, their entire modeling and how they pay out premiums or how they charge premiums and they pay out benefits, it's all based on risk assessment.
By the way, that's one of the things that should be being released to the public, because the insurance companies, they know what's going on with the vaccine and with COVID, because it's in their data.
I'm sure if anyone's going to be collecting that, it's insurance companies
they have to.
because they
their,
have
their whole
to,
business depends
their
on
whole their whole business model is on risk using risk assessment models.
The real data, especially on the vaccines and their effectiveness and their risk, their inherent risk, the mortality rate, they have that information. That's the information we want to see. It's not whatever the government tells us, because we can't really trust it because since they mandated it, they have to do a little CYA.
Yes.
But the insurance companies, they know that data is there. And it's probably extremely clear and unambiguous. And either, yes, it's totally safe.
I don't know that we're ever going to see that, though.
No, but we should. Like, if people really care, our government, representatives, that's what they should be doing. They should be passing a law that forces these insurance companies, and they can anonymize it and protect, proprietary, there's ways to do it. But get us that data. This is so obvious because they have mountains and mountains of it. We will have a near statistical certainty about many of these questions regarding the vaccine. That's what they should be doing. Are they going to do it? Not a chance in hell.
No.
Because I guarantee you, if there is anything about it that is dangerous to the public, Pfizer and Merck, they're going to be paying off all those people in power to make sure that can never happen. I mean, look at, Merck was told the judge that they didn't want to release any of their supposedly public information for 70 years or 170 years or what, with their trial.
So
data.
everyone's gone. Their children, everyone's dead, and their children are dead.
And normally that information for those trials is released.
God.
So you got to ask yourself, why? Why would they do that?
Well, because I think Operation Warp Speed was too fast.
Well, so for those who don't remember, Operation Warp Speed was what the Trump administration called the fast tracking of what would become the COVID vaccines. And so, yes, I think it's fair if you're going to rush the process to give protections to the drug companies and all that kind of, I'm okay with that on a fundamental level. The problem is if you can't prove the efficacy and a minimum safety standard.
Well, and you're not transparent.
And you're not transparent, then none of those, no, you don't get special protection.
Well, the thing is, I think in, May, June, July of 2020, everybody wanted, from day one probably, everyone wanted a working vaccine. So I don't think there was a person out there that was saying, oh, I don't think we should have a vaccine for this.
Well, okay. So I would rephrase that. Everybody wanted the magic pill. Okay. It could have been anything. It could have been, by the way, it might have been ivermectin, but it could have been anything that was going to fix the problem. It didn't have to be
monoclonal antibodies.
Right. There was a whole variety of things. So that's what the people wanted.
Yeah, we wanted it. You're right. A magic pill is a much better
in the kind of non-literal sense. It didn't have to be a pill. If it was vaccine, fine. But whatever, the thing that was just going to make this go away.
Yeah.
People desperately wanted that.
So, but everyone was invested in
and they were invested in that, yeah.
Everyone was invested in the idea of a magic pill.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part A. Part B is that we've got the magic pill, but we want to see why it's the magic pill.
Well, or I want to make sure that the magic pill isn't going to kill me.
Yeah. Yeah. But why is it? You're saying this is what it is. Can you show us how?
Yeah. Well, and you do that historically in the FDA. So the FDA has two requirements for all drugs that are approved. You have to prove efficacy, meaning it actually is effective against the thing that you're saying it can be prescribed for. And you have to prove safety. You have to do both. If either of those two tests fail, then it does not get approved. Okay. And in the case of the COVID vaccines, they told us that it was safe and effective. And it's looking to me that the effectiveness is so marked. I mean, I'm trying to be generous, but I'm leaning more and more to the effectiveness is really kind of not even there at all. But if it is, it's extremely minor. And the safety, I'm really having problems with the safety argument. I mean, there have been many, many drugs that never saw the light of day with far lower percentage of drug incidents than the COVID vaccine.
We have people in our lives, one specifically, their son was in the hospital, a boy that we've known for a long time, and he needed it to go to college and did the first dose and was in the hospital for 2 days.
Right.
And the mom was like, I don't know how we're going to get the booster.
Right.
Because
the booster being a requirement at some universities, it's not just you have one shot. You have to be, quote unquote, up to date on all your shots.
Yeah. And so what do you do with that? Like your child has a reaction. He was in the demographic. I mean, he was at the time, a 18-year-old boy, which is right in the demographic of what they're saying is 18-year-old boys should not be getting the vaccine.
Well, yeah, they shouldn't be getting vaccine because they're not susceptible to COVID death.
Well, that's one reason, but
so you never take a drug you don't need.
So yes, so that's part one. Part two, though, is that not only did he not need it for safety purposes, it was unsafe to get the vaccine. And they're saying,
yes. I
mean, even over in Europe, I think they're saying males under age 30, like, don't get it.
Yeah, I know. Was it Denmark? Was it one of the countries there? Yeah, maybe it was Germany. I can't remember, but one or more of the countries there, as their health department has said, do not give to that younger male demographic.
Yeah,
because the safety profile is so atrocious. Oh my goodness! I just hope that the next thing that comes when it comes to public health, that people are just a little bit more suspicious, a little more, what's the word? Critical. Use a little bit more common sense. If the government is pushing on something hard without convincing arguments and by convincing arguments, I mean based on data, not people's opinions. If they're going to do that, then you should be asking yourself, who is benefiting from this? Because there has to be a reason they're doing that. And most likely it's going to be corruption, money, something.
Well, also an easy way to subdue the masses.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, if you want to really get down to it, right? If you want to enact a China-style government, I don't think there's a better example of how to fast track that than COVID.
Oh, the thing is, you start fast tracking it very early, and maybe when the so-called pandemic is over, which I don't even think the pandemic is over. I think that certain parts of the government are still in pandemic mode.
Well, I mean, Joe Biden said the pandemic was over, but
I think his officials though were like, no, it's actually not over, Joe.
They correct him on everything.
Yeah. Well, they do correct him on everything because he often says things that need to be corrected.
Does he even know what he's saying?
Well, that is, I think, a daily question.
Yeah, that's always another thing. Okay. Well, I know I've steered us down all kinds of rabbit holes, which I'm really good at doing. Is there anything, what else about the relationships, the changing of relationships, regarding COVID?
So everything we just talked about with the vaccines, with the fear, I think that right there is the crux of the issue. There were a lot of people that were on the side of that. And then there were a lot of people that were not on the side.
On the side of, you mean forced vaccine or?
Forced vaccines. I'm not going to have my family members who aren't vaccinated over for the holidays. Echoing the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And it was hard to navigate relationships because you didn't actually know how people felt about those ideas.
Right.
And so then you end up in a situation where you're self-censoring. Do you go out? Do you post? You're not on social media, so that wouldn't affect you. But you're really beginning to self-censor. I mean, Instagram feeds just fell down to nothing because you're like, if I go somewhere, I'm not going to tell people.
Oh, so you would stop posting the normal things you would post.
Yeah, because you don't want people to
judge you.
We did a couple 4-wheel drive outings, and we did one. We had about 10 cars in this outing, and this was out by the Salton Sea. It was a beautiful drive. Everyone was in their 4-wheel drive cars, but we drove out to this bridge that was in the middle of nowhere, and this was deep lockdown. And we get out there, and there were tons of people out of this bridge in groups.
Was this in Mexico?
No, not in Mexico.
This is
east of the Salton Sea.
Okay.
And which is basically Eastern California, like kind of I would say if you kept going east, you'd end up in Arizona. And there were people everywhere out there. but they were socializing away from cameras. They were socializing away from the eye of
the judging eye.
The judging eye of the camera. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, oh my gosh, if I posted this on social media, people who are against this type of behavior would go nuts.
Well, and in fact, we know that's what everybody in power seemed like they were doing. Remember all the photos of Nancy Pelosi getting her hair done in the salon?
Oh my gosh, with her.
Newsom at party. Remember what was the French Laundry, the restaurant?
French
he had his own private party when all
geez.
restaurants were supposed to be shut down.
Yeah. No, the thing is, people everywhere were doing this
it, right.
within their little bubbles, within their little pods, but you couldn't talk about it because if you talked about it, then you would make it obvious to everyone.
Then you would become a target.
You would become a target.
The very same people who were there would be like, oh, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, and then it just became so awkward.
By the way, this just reinforces my whole point. You cannot quarantine the healthy.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It cannot be done. It's literally, think about it. It is impossible. If something is so infectious where you have to quarantine the healthy, then literally nobody could ever walk out of their room.
Yeah, because there's not just like a little bit. You can't just do it a little bit.
Because if it's that infectious, the mom going to the grocery store, right, just contracted it, and now she's going to spread it to her whole family.
She's got the bandana on her face.
Well, yeah, sorry. She's being protected by the little cloth bandana.
Yeah.
The stupid mask that she's been using for a week. Again, a little bit of common sense would get us so far along to eliminating so much of this insanity and the giving up of so much freedom.
Well, I think with COVID, at the end of the day, I think I found out too much about people. I ended up, I don't want to know how people feel about germs. I don't want to know. Okay. Like I knew too much. There's certain things you just don't want to know.
Well, I mean, we know people that are clean freaks, right? Or that are germaphobes, and we can still be friends with them.
Yes, but it was like there was too much out. There was too much exposed. How people feel about things. Like I didn't want to know that, a certain friend was going to get mad at me because I was going to go on a drive. So
as another way of saying that, then you didn't want your casual relationships to become reveal too much intimate information.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to say it.
Right.
It's like
you have the casual relationship, you like it in that space. And because of COVID, all of a sudden you learned things about people that you would not normally have ever known. And now you're like, yeah, I don't know about that one. It is an interesting premise, this idea that COVID changed relationships because you learned things about people that normally, maybe instinctively, we avoid learning about because we know that it could go one way or the other. And as long as we don't know, and as long as it's not an issue between us, we have a space where we can cohabitate and exist together and enjoy each other's time.
Yeah, you don't ask certain questions because you're like, that doesn't affect my daily life with this person. Right. Maybe it's a coworker or,
And sometimes asking the question itself is going to cause a rift, right?
Yeah, so you don't even bring it up.
So you don't bring it up,
it's a happy existence.
It's a happy existence, and all of human nature. I mean, human interaction is full of this. I'm sure we're doing this instinctively all the time, and then something like COVID just rips all those, unwritten rules to shreds. I suspect that sociologists are gonna do all kinds of research on the effects of COVID in society. Psychologists. I'm sure there's a lot of material that's going to come out of this.
There's a lot of articles out there. There was an article, and we'll just kind of finish up with this. There was an article written by a lady, Emily Oster, and it's called "Let's Declare a Pandemic Amnesty." And she wrote that she would just like to focus on the future and forget all of the ugliness that happened during COVID. But my issue with her is that her entire premise is incorrect. She's basically saying, there was all this stuff we didn't know, so we made bad decisions. It's like, forgive me for all the bad things I said when I was drunk It's like, I didn't know any better. I made all these choices based on limited information, but I don't think her premise is even correct, because a lot of people did know.
Yeah, they knew things. And not only that, if they didn't know, they sure acted like they did.
Well, she goes on to describe in the same article, actually in the very beginning of the article, how her 4-year-old son, they would go hiking as a family, how her 4 years old, if someone passed too closely to him on the trail, would yell out social distancing.
God.
It's terrible. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I could never not unsee that. I'm sorry. Because you're a person who is telling your 4-year-old to yell at other people about social distancing. Like, you're that person.
By the way, can I just point out, is there any data on the effectiveness of social distancing?
They just made up the 6 feet.
Right. So am I wrong? There's no data on that?
If there is, it's very limited. From what I understand, there was very low.
If that's true, if there isn't any real data on A, social distance, and B, what the distance needs to be, okay, even if there is such a thing that would work, look how our entire society was transformed with that policy. Businesses were shut down because there was no way of enforcing that. I mean, lives were it's not just the inconvenience of it waiting in the line at the bank. I mean, that one thing all by itself was enough to just rip everything to shreds.
Yeah.
And yet it was based on what exactly? These are the questions that I don't understand why people didn't ask and weren't asking, and they just accepted.
Well, and then you summarize it in the 4-year-old yelling on the trail at other people.
And he's
now forever changed.
I mean,
unless his mom really comes,
if he's forever changed, it's because his parents, kids are pretty, maybe he can
but his
cover
parents
that.
created an atmosphere.
Well, and what I'm saying is that they will continue to do. I mean, if they had the propensity to do that, it didn't just stop. So
yeah, her article was not written from the point of view of like, hey, I didn't do my homework.
No, I agree with you. That's
a different.
This is I don't know if I wouldn't call it a movement, but this is an idea. And I think it's in order to let everybody get off the hook. All the people who made these decisions, who could be found financially or legally in jeopardy as a result of these decisions, which in some cases I believe can probably be proven to be intentionally wrong or intentionally based on false facts, premises, whatever. This is a way of trying to protect them. And I will say there's a lot of people who will be willing to go along with it because a lot of people just want it to go away.
Well, she wants it to go away.
Yeah.
And instead of coming out with an article saying, hey, there was data out there and I made some choices, I didn't dive deep enough into the subject matter and I'm faulting myself. I should have, next time this happens, I'm going to do better at really researching these topics. See that if she would have said that,
that wouldn't be enough for me. In order for me to have any kind of respect for that position, she would have to come out and say, what we did is one of the most horrendous things that could have ever happened.
She did not.
In public health.
No.
And I, to my dying breath, am going to do everything in my power to make sure this can never happen again. That's the language that I have to hear.
Mistakes were made on both sides. We didn't know.
The passive voice, right? As we learned in English class, mistakes were made.
Yeah.
that meaning you can't assign any responsibility to anybody.
Oh, that's exactly
right. That's why you use the passive voice.
Yes.
Because you cannot ascribe the person actually doing the action. So yeah, they're going to do that. I don't know if it's going to be successful because I think there are enough people that were so terribly affected by this, anything from vaccine injury to their loved ones dying alone needlessly, losing their businesses, their house, maybe their family and their marriage as a result of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we had all kinds of situations where, not we, but as a society where families were, maybe husbands weren't great, maybe wives weren't great, and they were forced to be together a lot.
Oh, yeah, right. Too much time together.
Too much time together.
Well, not only that, I mean, let's face it, if you can't work and you were the breadwinner for the family, that's just death.
Terrible stress.
Because it's going to destroy you internally. It's going to destroy the relationships that you have with people. You're going to feel like a failure. Your family's going to be disappointed in you. I mean, it's just, and that happened a lot.
Yeah.
And that's
very, very
because we
sad.
don't have that didn't happen to us specifically.
It did not happen to us.
It's not something that we can talk to,
No, we cannot speak specifically to it. It didn't happen to us.
It absolutely happened.
But it absolutely happened. Yeah. And there were people in the periphery of my life where the relationship is.
Right.
And these weren't close people. So I want to make sure this was no one in my inner circle, but it was more of an awakening to people in my outer circle of like, wow, this person is, I mean, maybe they voted for a different president. Who cares? That doesn't affect our daily life. But all of a sudden, this person is like on board with telling me I shouldn't leave my house. Like,
right.
Like, wait a minute, I don't want to know that about you. So we've come full circle, and I think we can wrap this up. But I just
all right. Well, I apologize if I derailed more than.
No, you didn't derail because
you did a very good job of trying to come up with a focused subject that I very quickly.
I think that one of the things about this podcast is we're going to pick a subject, but we want to make sure that we are following, just letting the discussion.
Yeah, the subject sometimes might be nothing more than a jumping off point, right?
Exactly,
and that's okay because we're not trying to create contrived conversations here. No. That's not what we do. And I suspect that if we're rolling with a topic, we're not the only ones that are thinking that that's an interesting path to go down in a conversation.
Well, also, I think you can have talking points, but right. Those don't always.
Talking points can be read in 30 seconds.
Yes, can be read in 30 seconds, and they maybe aren't as interesting as a conversation that just keeps going and we don't know where it's going to lead.
No, we don't.
Well, Erin, as we wrap this up, are there any funny tidbits you'd like to end us on? I mean, it's a holiday week.
Oh,
maybe there's some holiday info.
Yes, there is one. So I decided I was going to learn. I'm not a cook, for sure, but I decided I was going to make pumpkin pie because I thought, how hard could that be? Well, there's a friend of mine I've recorded, she sings, and I've recorded with her. She's a good friend of mine, and she's an amazing cook. And I mentioned to her that I was going to do this. So she said, oh, I know exactly how to do listen, I'll come over and I'll show you how to do it.
You'll do it together.
So we'll do it together.
Yeah.
So she comes over and we, there's not that many ingredients to it. It's,
it's a custard.
Yeah, it's a custardy thing. And you take the pie mix and the pie spice, and I don't know, brown sugar and stuff. So we're mixing this together, and she's showing me, she's doing most of the work really. And she shows me how to do the little pie crust edgy thing, where you put the little indents. I don't know, people who
making it pretty. Yes.
And then we put in the mixture in there, and we put it in the oven, and the oven is supposed to last, or I think it's supposed to take, if I remember correctly, like 40 minutes, something like that. And so me and her are yapping, and 40 minutes comes up, and I go, and you can poke, I guess custards, right? They get hard, right? So and it's like super watery. And I said to her, she said, well, we'll leave it in. Sometimes those times are wrong, and we'll just leave it in for another 10 minutes.
Times are wrong? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a cook. I'm like, okay, well, maybe, this different pumpkin mixture. I don't know.
Well, ovens also.
And ovens have different temperatures, right? So we wait another 10 minutes, and it's the same way. And then we wait 20 minutes, and then an hour, and it's
like pumpkin pie soup.
And it's just barely congealed at all. And finally, she has to leave. I'm like, well, I'll just keep checking it until it goes. It's relatively low heat. I mean, yes, the crust is getting kind of brown, but it's not like burning. Like eventually this is going to get hard, right? Or firm up. Well, finally, I don't know how, 3 hours later, I take it out, and and I'm thinking, oh yeah, it looks like it's kind of there, but it's just sloshy as hell. And then she calls me up and she says, I'm an idiot. You're supposed to put eggs in it.
Oh my gosh. That's the whole base of a custard, egg and cream.
But it was so funny. Is this friend of mine, she's like this great cook. She's like, I'll show you how to do it. It'll be amazing. Talking. And she completely.
You guys were so invested in your own conversation.
I don't know what we were doing. Yeah, we were just yapping or whatever. So, but lesson learned, right? You always, who was it? Some famous scientist said you wouldn't learn more from your mistakes than you do from
you will never forget eggs in your custard again.
I will never forget the egg in a pumpkin pie. So I don't know. It's a stupid story.
Did you ever, have you had a successful pumpkin
pie? I did. After that, I did. Yeah.
Good.
And it came out quite nice. And I mean, I can't get the little, the crust is, I have a challenge getting the little indentations. It looks bad. The little crust kind of falls, but it tastes
good.
Well,
once it's cut, it doesn't matter.
So, hey, listen, for me, that's a big victory.
Yes.
So that was kind of a funny little story. So anything for you?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for you?
No.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for today. Do we have your topic on the list for next week?
Well, I have, as a matter of fact. And for right now, I'll think about it.
Oh, that's clever. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to the I'll Think About It podcast.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the I'll Think About It podcast. We hope we've given you something to think about. Please share us with your friends and on your social media. Goodbye for now. Wait, did we just do TMI?
I think so. I don't think we can publish this.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I know.